Hello there and welcome to another chess video detailing the basics of chess. In this video I'll be discussing another important aspect of the game called algebraic notation. This isn't an aspect that will actually help your chess play in the short term, but will rather help it progress in the long term. Algebraic notation is the general form used by players to record their games. This allows them to look back on their games later on and analyze the games, and which will help them progress and learn from their mistakes. Algebraic notation, while it sounds difficult, is very simple. Each piece gets a letter. Each piece gets a letter that corresponds with the letter of their name. This is the only exception for this is the knight, because the kings also start with K, so we're gonna call the knights with the N. And as we see here, the board is divided into files and ranks. Files and ranks, as you can see. And if you look closely, you can see numbers. You can see numbers on the files, number on the ranks, and the letters on the file. Sorry, and this allows you to pinpoint a piece's exact location once it moves. For example, I have a game which will help us learn more about algebraic notation. So white opens with e4. The e pawn moves 2 squares up to the 4th rank on the e file, which is this square is e4. So we have the pawn moving to e4. Pawns don't get a letter because it may cause a lot of confusion in a case like this. For example, now if you said P takes d5, for a capture we would use the mark X. Then we don't know which piece took d5, and this could cause a lot of confusion. To continue on with the game, black plays e5. e5 because the e pawn moves up 2 squares to the 5th rank on the e5. The knight moves to f3, which gives it the notation knight f3. Now we have knight c6, where the knight moves to the c6 square, which means knight c6. We have bishop c4. The bishop moves diagonally to the c4 square, bishop c4. You have d6. The pawn moves 1 square up to the 6th rank on the d file, d6. Then we have castles. As we saw in our last video, castling is when the king moves 2 squares over, either on his right or left, and then the rook jumps over the king to land right next to it. This is a very special move, and it can only be used once per game. If you were castling on the short side, then you would call it 0-0. And if you were castling on the queen side, the long side, then it'd be called 0-0-0. So on the long side it'd be 3 zeros, and on the short side it'd be 2 zeros. So we have castles 0-0. Then we have bishop g4. We have knight c3. The knight moves to the c3 square. Then we have knight d4, and this proves to be the mistake for black that allows white to win the game. We have knight takes e5. The knight moves in an L formation to the e5 square and captures the pawn, which gives it the X marking. Gives it X between the knight and the e5 notation. And then we have bishop takes d1, the bishop taking d1. Then we have bishop takes f7, check. And then we have king e7. And now I'll give you a moment to find the checkmate in 1 for white. For those of you who are able to do it, the move is knight to d5 checkmate. This blocks every single square the king can go to, and the knight defends the bishop, and since it's a knight, there is no way of blocking the check. for those of you who want to see what a real piece of notation looks like, this is what the game would have looked like. E4, E5, Knight F3, Knight C6, Bishop C4, D6, castles 0-0, Bishop G4, Knight C3, Knight D4, Knight XE5, Bishop XD1, Bishop XF7 check, and King E7, Knight D5 checkmate. For check we would use a plus mark, and for checkmate we would use a number symbol. Of course, you don't have to draw the pieces, and you could use letters instead. The pieces are just a setting on the website I'm using. Another few things to remember in algebraic notation. If you were about to do en passant, the special move the pawn has, where we can take this pawn as if it just moved one squared up. Remember, this can only be done right after this pawn has moved 2 squares up to d5. Then this would just go in as e takes d6, not e takes d5. And another thing we would have to remember is when the pawn is promoting, we'd say, for example, this pawn is moving to h8. We would say h8 equals the symbol of the letter. We are symbol of the letter of the piece that we are promoting to. Here it would be h8 equals q check, because the queen is also checking the king. This concludes my video on algebraic notation. I hope you learned something today, and you can leave your questions, comments, and ideas in the comments.